We're awesome. That's all. Okay,
That's
great.
right. That's the right manifestation of ego, I think.
Yeah, is confidence and the willing to embarrass yourself.
Without experience. And so you have to have the humility to understand that you don't have experience. And if you have the humility to say, I don't know, well, what'll happen then is you'll be able to learn. A lot of people, when they don't know something, the ego kicks in and they start pretending they know. Or they know one tiny thing and they'll lean on it so hard. And then our insecurity gets manifest as arrogance, bravado. And then you start tripping all over yourself because it's not, you remember, I mean, I've told you this before, one of my first when I was auditioning for my first Broadway play, the guy who ran the theater, who was a former head of Juilliard, really interesting guy, said, have you done anything before? And I said, well, you know, I played Romeo in the school production of this. I played, you know, I was full of this long list of credits. And he said, right, you've done nothing. You've never acted on stage. I was like, no. He goes, let's say that. You have no idea what you're doing. And I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. He's like, great. Now you're in a great place to learn because you do have some talent. And if you have some talent, we can work with it. Make sense?
That makes so much sense. And that feels like that's the beginner's mind thing of the best place to start is when you open your mind and don't think that you're the, you know, smartest person in the room or whatever.
Tabula rasa thing is like I remember the first time I showed you how to shoot a bow and arrow and right to the target. You know, it's like we're just goofing around there out at Charles Gaines's.
I haven't hit a bullseye since.
Yeah, but the first time when you go like, I don't know what I'm doing, and you pick it up and you kind of, your eye goes, dun, dun, and then it works, but then you start thinking about it too much and you screw it up.
Yeah, you screw it all up. Okay, next question. Paul and Joanne were very political, and they used their cultural influence to attempt to positively influence and shape their time period to the best of their ability. Do you think that it's artists' responsibility to be political or just to contribute the best way that they know how? Like, do you think that if you have the self-awareness to know that you're stupid, you should not tell people what you think? Like what is in terms of our relationship to people in the arts being these you know current present day political influencers? Paul and Joanne were some of the first artistic political influencers, and what do you think about that? It is a responsibility, or is it just a possibility?
I think you could make you could ask the exact same question and take out the word artist. I mean, I put in the documentary an amazing quote where MLK was being interviewed with Paul Newman. It was an amazing side note story where Johnny Carson was a really interesting person. And in the height of the civil rights movement, he offered a whole week of his show to Harry Belafonte. And Harry Belafonte led it, and they wanted to have all these civil rights conversations on the show. But they couldn't get any white stars to show up, right? Except Paul Newman came, I think, 3 times. And so there's this clip of him being interviewed on stage with Martin Luther King. And they get asked that question. And Martin Luther King says something incredibly wise, surprise, surprise, about that all of us were human beings before we had a profession. And whatever that profession is, and we have a responsibility to continue the development of that being, regardless of said profession. And some of us are political. And some people are not hardwired that way. It's very difficult for them, their brain, to engage in that. Paul, I think because he was Jewish, because he was a World War II veteran, had an awareness of what racism was, what injustice was, because he was obviously raised pretty well. He had a deep awareness. He said way before, you hear this a lot, but he said back in the early 60s, the luckiest thing that ever happened to him being born white. He had an awareness of what systemic racism was and how he was put in this magnificent privileged position simply by his birth and time and place, right? And he never lost that. And so he felt the more successful he became, the more obligation he felt in trying to spread the wealth. And that manifested finally when Paul and Joanne started Newman's Own and gave away hundreds of millions of dollars. But it took them decades to figure out the best way to express their love and to share. But I don't know that that's the long answer. The short answer is I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, an additional thought that I think I've heard you say before, but is that it's only people who've reached a certain level of success, either have been born into it and privileged, have been born into it, or achieved it, that are allowed to live apolitically. Like everyone, like under the poverty line, everyone like minorities and like are not allowed, are not given permission to live apolitically, even if you're an artist, like you're inherently, it's an obligation. So I think that there's something to be said that athletes, artists, like politicians,
we are citizens that have a louder voice. And so I think in a way, a responsibility does fall on us. We just saw Elvis, and one of my, for those people who don't know, I took my, was shortly after your 13th birthday to Graceland, and we had an amazing experience. But I love Elvis, but I can't ever think hard on him without getting so disappointed that he didn't do more for Black artists. And so history doesn't smile well on that decision. He completely ripped off and had a great love of all these magnificent musicians. He was getting his start with Sam Phillips, who was dedicated to, getting Black music out into the world. And Elvis was a part of that and stole that. And he didn't really bring people along with him.
Yeah.
It's not like I think he's not allowed to sing those songs. I thought he sang the hell out of them. And it's a great possible thing to do to unite us, to sing each other's songs and to be together. But it has to stay us.
Yeah.
It doesn't stay us, it starts to be stealing. And so like it does on that period of post-on Elvis. I'm
just reviewing my notes for further questions. I had to make sure I was prepared here. Okay, this is just a super like basic acting question. Do you think that it's cheating to rely on personal life experience, emotional recall when you're acting in a story, or do you think it's a part of, like, if you're sitting there acting, you're like, okay, you gotta cry, think about when your dog died, think about when your dog died, you got this, is that cheating? Is there such a thing as cheating when you're acting, or is it only about the end product? Is it process or product?
If it works, it ain't cheating, right? But
yeah.
But I would say this to that. Oh, think about my dog dying. Think about my dog dying. The second you do that, your hands are tense, your neck is tense, your back is tense. You're forcing something on yourself. I've played this game with you before, which is if you clench your fists and you clench your neck and you clench your mouth and you squinch down and squinch your toes and you do that, and then I tell you to imagine peeling an orange. You can't do it. And this is, if we want to talk about method acting, it's imagination, relaxation, concentration, right? You have to be relaxed for the imagination to happen. And you have to be focused on what the story you're trying to tell is, right? So if you're concentrated, meaning your lines, the text, the metaphor of the play, the world of the universe you're acting in, and you're relaxed, then your imagination can take off and you can really remember peeling an orange, and you smell it and your fingers get sticky and this part isn't peeling as well, and details start to happen. And details are what other people can relate to. Everything's generic until you get into the details of human experience. And so when the details start happening, believe it or not, the thought of your dog dying or something, if you're really relaxed and happening, will move you. I mean, so it's not an effort, and it's this, one of the things I had to cut out of the documentary is Kazan used to have an exercise, which is that you would just take a word or a sentence in your text and really attach emotion to it. I mean, in private, on your own. I have the word dog in my line, and so I will go alone in my room and meditate on my dog, that I loved when my mother brought him home and he was a puppy. And then I remember him being middle-aged. And then when I remember when he passed away, and you're thinking about that, and you just attach it to that word dog. And I'm telling you, the second that line comes up, that word pops up, this flood of memories just happens. And it's not cheating. It's it's trying to figure out how to invoke hypnosis, right? The job, when you see Nina Simone on stage, she hypnotizes an audience like that. What does she hypnotize them with? Her pain, her reality, her joy, her love, and that comes out in her voice. And so it's trying to connect whatever's real and authentic with you with said instrument. Does that make sense?
Totally, totally. I have a follow-up question. I mean, it's great. It's an amazing answer. I have a follow-up question that's, feel free to go slow, because
Okay.
it's dangerous, slightly, ever so slightly. But growing up with you and my mom as parents, I watched actors negotiate playing a difficult role with being present in their life as a human being, and simultaneously. And actors who are parents, I think, have to do this in a way that some actors who are not parents don't have the same pressure to have to do it. Because if you're a parent, you've got your kid on set, even if you have to be screaming and crying when the cameras are rolling, when it cuts, you have to go pick up your baby and be like, hey, everything's okay. Like, this is my job. This is my art. Like, everything's okay. I'm okay. You're okay. Like, and I watched you guys both do that for me, and it gave me this impression of what it meant to be an actor, and that it meant this kind of level of play and this ability to be present in your life at the same time. But in my life as a professional, that idea has been questioned and pushed in different ways, watching other people work differently than that, watching, and I'm interested in what your, was your decision to do that more about the kind of parent you wanted to be, or more about the kind of actor you wanted to be? And how connected are those things?
I think when your life is really working, there's an integration. The person I want to be, the dad I want to be, and the artist I want to be are the same thing. And when my life is out of balance, you know, if my focus is too hard on my artistic life, what happens is my personal life is out of balance, and therefore throws my artistic life off balance. That it's an integrity of all the disparate elements of your life, you know, and that you yourself, we're like a tree or something with this root system, and you're going to draw, you know, you drew water from your mom, you drew water from me, you drew water from your siblings, you drew water from your friendships, from your reading you did, the life you had on your own. And that as you get older, that root system is expanding, and that creates balance in your life. When I've been off balance, everything goes out of whack. You know,
Yeah.
and it sometimes can briefly manifest in a great performance. Or for me, like, I'll never forget, you know, the mistake I made. I invited you to see, you were so falling in love with acting, and I was having this amazing experience being directed by Austin Pendleton in Ivanov, and I was working on Chekhov, and I really view those plays as kind of the hardest thing to do. And so I wanted you to see it, and I completely forgot that my character commits suicide at the end of the play until you in the audience. And I mean, it took you weeks to get over that.
It was so upsetting. Yeah.
That
But,
home was a giant fail as a parent.
well, I wouldn't say that. I
I,
wouldn't say that. I mean, that's not how I remember it. I think it was also a time where I learned about the boundaries between emotions that are safe and emotions that are not safe. Um, and I think that we've talked about this a lot, when it comes to like philosophies behind what horror movies are like art is a space where you get to experience feelings that scare you in a safe environment. Um, and sometimes that is too far, and people get really upset, and we're in a situation that they shouldn't have been in. But I think the vast majority of experience with art, even art about dark things, gives us permission to have feelings about times that we were unsafe and do feel unsafe in an environment that is 100% controlled, and we are 100% safe.
that's the value of art. I mean, it's
Yeah.
very difficult. You watch it all over the internet and the news. You know, people don't know how to talk about human sexuality, for example.
Yeah.
everybody experiences it. We're all aware of it, but talking about it in any way is extremely difficult. The same with issues of faith.
Yeah.
Mentions God or Buddha or Allah, and certain groups of the table shuts down, right? They
Yeah.
get scared. Am I going to be proselytized too? Is this going to be difficult? But art is the space where human sexuality, things like fear, emotions we don't want to feel, all of it, familial troubles, you know,
Yeah.
amazing experiences through the movies of healing in my own family, you know, with my mom and dad, things by seeing a great story about a mother and a father or kids. And you start to go, oh, wow, I'm not so alone. And
Yeah.
they do that by talking about really scary things, but in a safe place, because it's not
Yeah.
lit, it's edited, there's music playing, it has a beginning, middle, and end. And therefore, we, the audience, get to learn how to navigate our emotional life through our stories. So I do think, you know, I just thought you were a little young for that, or I thought I didn't prepare you. And I thought of that one because that's the last time that a character ran away with my life. I,
Mm.
I was off balance. So if I'm glad that you don't remember it as hurtful. I'm really glad. But if I made the right decision, it was by accident.
Yeah.
I was out of balance. I was working really hard. Um, and I really wanted to do a good job, really. And the play explores deeply depression and how depression and egomaniacal behavior and megalomaniacal behavior are kind of connected. When you stop being able to see other people and you only see yourself, your ego either goes way up or way down. And
Totally. Yeah. That's a great answer. Last question
okay,
is much more is very simple, which is that because I think I hear people talking about this stuff all the time is when you think about with what jobs you're going to take or not take, do you think broadly about the arc of your career as a whole? Or are you thinking about what you want to do right now? Like, are you looking at, well, I've never been in a kids movie. I've never done a comedy. I've got to do this. I've got to do that. Or I don't do comedy, or, these kind of like parameters that people put around themselves, or as they plan their perfect career in their head. Or are you just kind of taking it day by day, year by year, project by project?
I think like a free Sunday afternoon, you have to have a plan and you have to be willing to abandon it. You know, it's like, yeah, I do have on my checklist, you just called it out. It's like, I'm looking at what I've done with my life. And I'm like, how have I never done a bald-faced comedy? Like, I want to do Step Brothers. I want to be like a small part in Talladega Nights. I want to do something like really funny like that. And but if I stop my life with this agenda to pursue comedy when it's not happening naturally, you know, you got to move with the river a little bit. You know, one of my first movies was with Jeremy Irons, and at that time he just won the Oscar, and it was such an honor to be working with him, and he was really brilliant. And he said you have to take risks, but in the parameters of an achievable goal, in the parameters of where you can succeed. Push the boundaries of your box a little bit. You don't need to make these grand statements of changing yourself all the time. You can move with the river and be open to change. Um, I often think about it. I have these plans about what I want my career to be, and then I just do what makes sense in the moment. And
Yeah.
often, you know, I mean, my plans have never turned out. You know, like,
Do you feel like it's the same with your personal life? Like, probably, there are things about your personal life now that are more kind of defined because that's what happens as you get older, as there are things with your career that are more defined because that's what happens as you go, because you have more experience and have made more choices already. But I feel like that's also something that's true about one's personal life, is you have these ideas about how it's going to go, and they can make you feel comfortable when you're going to bed at night, and then you have no idea what's going to happen.
well, you know, I remember that a lot of us as young lay in bed and write in our journal about what your perfect lover is going to be like.
Yeah, or the kid who sits, 2 seats down from you at school, and you're like, Mr. You know, like whatever, you make up your own new name.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and it's fun and it has no bearing on reality.
Yeah.
Like, you know, love is something that happens to you, you know, and your life happens to you. I've always said, like, you know, like, I remember Linkletter said this to me when I met Rick. I was about 24, and I had this whole kind of beat philosophy, and I'm like, I've got to go out there and live life and have adventures and have experience. And Rick was always like, life's gonna happen. Like, you're gonna have, what you need is to read more. Like, you need to be smarter. Like, don't
Yeah.
be about pursuing drama. Like, you don't need to ride motorcycles to Panama to have a life. Like, do it if you want, but don't do it for the story. You know, you can go read Motorcycle Diaries and kind of absorb that and see what you think. And, you know, you don't need to inflict pain on yourself. It's going to come. It's going to come.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, you need to learn so that you're prepared with how to think about it and process it in an intelligent way when it happens. It's gonna come.
Well, did I pass the test?
I mean, you just passed the test, and I'm just so grateful. Now, instead of, you have to make sure you save this. By the way, we can keep going if you want to. Those were the questions that I had written down.
Well, I think this is amazing. I don't want to waste people's time. Clementine just got back from camp. She's
oh God, go deal with Clementine. But make sure you're gonna save this so that it's there forever, so that when I get asked what is best advice my dad's given me, I can just say it's available on his Instagram.
Yeah, great. I'll save it. I
Please
won't
go look over at it. Okay.
Take the beginning of this. I can finish strong.
Great. We should start doing this, or we should just keep track of like the most regular questions that we get asked about the other person, and then just like put them on the record, like put the answers out on the record of us talking to each other, and then there can just be a big catalog available. Well, we don't have to answer any of them anymore.
Maybe when your album comes out, I'll interview you.
I mean, that's a great, I love that idea. Okay.
All the people ask me about you.
Well, The Last Movie Stars is so good. Everyone should watch it. You've done an amazing job. I learned so much watching you make it. I learned so much talking to you about it. And I learned so much watching it. And I cried, and it's funny. And making it, and it's such a film history lesson at the same time, where it's like, you know, it's an incredible film class that takes you through many, many years of filmmaking by looking at specific careers of actors, which is such a kind of a way that I feel like no one in film schools teaches the history of film. You don't go to one or two actors and go like, what choices did they make in their lives? You know, even if you look at it from beginning to end. And it's such an interesting way to learn about film history, acting, and what it means to live a healthy life as a human being in the arts in the world. So thank you for making this. I'm so glad to have it as a teacher. It's like the next chapter of Rules for a Night or something, you know? It's really great.
Well, I'm really grateful to have a daughter who would put on time to help me like this. Thank you, Maya.
Oh, I'm not helping you. I love you so much. You're the best. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Dad.
All right, so I just press here.